Okay, so this is an expensive build. This is probably about $5,000 worth of stuff. Yeah, so this should be fun. We're gonna have a i9 1300K. I believe this is 64 gigs of RAM, DDR5, 1 terabyte. So yeah, and this is 6200 megahertz. You got a 1 terabyte NVMe. It's a 980 Pro. It's only a 1 terabyte, so don't have to worry about the firmware update for the 2. This is a hefty boy. Also with this motherboard, this is the Z790. Yeah. So ROG Maximus Z790 Hero. Let's see what else it comes with. I think this is the second one of these that I've actually put together. So not only does it have integrated M.2 slots, it also comes with an M2 card. That's one in the camera. Comes with an integrated M2 camera. I believe these are the drivers and everything. And we got some a little more accessories in here. Let's see what else we got here. This is the Wi-Fi stuff, which this guy definitely wants. That's a bracket. I have to figure out what that bracket is actually for. Alright, NVMe standoff, because I'm going to be using the integrated one. I'm not going to use the add-in card, because he only has a single. And that 4090 is going to take up some space. Like 100% going to take up some space. These little insert things. Keep this out. This is a thermal pad. I'm curious what it's going to be for. We have the power button header, so you can put the cable together first. This is for the Asus fan. If you wanted to put this over, I believe it goes over this. It's for the either that or it's for the RAM. Could be for the RAM. All right. So first things first, I'm going to install the NVMe. So we have thermal pads on both sides, and we have one of the nice little, you can kind of see it here. This is, get a nice close-up of it. This is, instead of your standard, like screw that goes in, this is a spinning clip that basically locks it in place as it spins. It's kind of nice. But we got to pull all the material off of there and kind of go from there. So this one actually has 2 thermal pads, one on the bottom, one on the top, depending on which one you're going to use. Or not depending on which one you're going to use, but like, it's there to make things easy. We'll just put it like that. So that goes down, that spins, it is now locked in place. So you have your thermal pad down there, and then there's a thermal pad on the back of this little shroud. Always remove this 100% of the time. And I have to remember which way this thing was on here. It's definitely not that way, it was this way. That's on there. Alright, NVMe installed. So we actually are going to put this back in the box. Pull some peels. One back there. Yeah. All right, we got our CPU slot. That's right, I'm putting an SSD in it. go. And we got our DDR5 Dominator Platinum. And normally you have to pay attention with these to make sure that you're populating the correct slots of RAM with this. Because like the RAM, like they want you to have it in specific paired like slots. So it's usually the first and the third and the second and the fourth, and they usually want you to start with the second and the fourth. But in this situation, because we are populating all 4 slots, it's not really that big of a deal. I'm gonna move over to the getting this installed into the case and getting the case set up. As we're gonna install, it's got a liquid cooler, one of the all-in-ones, and we're gonna go ahead and get that installed next, because that takes up the most space. So you'll notice I'm still putting these in paired sets, because they're tested as paired sets. They're not just like randomly tossed together in packages. So when they're going to package them up, they generally will test them together. So I know these two work well as a pair. That's why Corsair went ahead and put them together as a pair. So I'm going to keep them as a pair for the in their individual slots. Man, this memory going in here though is crunchy in ways that I'm not happy with, but that's the way it's made. All right, out of here. All right, so now this motherboard is ready to be installed. The only thing I need to do with it still is there's a bracket that needs to go on the back of it. Grab the case. And we have a Corsair 7000D. So it's a big old boy. Cool thing about the 7000D, it's got a lot of places for fans. We got a lot of panels and stuff. This is the second build with these basically exact same components that I've done in this. The first one was black, one was white. We have all of the Corsair fan controller and everything back there, which is nice. Like, unfortunately, I'm going to probably remove that because we're going to use Corsair Commanders for everything. And this is just an RGB hub. Things I know I'm not going to use, like I'm not going to be using that. This is a shroud for the power supply. I'll set this off to the side, so I'm going to go ahead and get some stuff removed while I'm doing this. You can't see what I'm doing at all, so I'm going to remove this rack. We're not going to be using the hard drive rack at all. So we'll get that out of there. We're going to get some fans installed on this. We're going to mount the radiator at the top. We have fans up front. I should not have to do anything with that. So we'll see what we got. We're not going to be using these, so we're going to try and take advantage of the extra space not having these in there will give us. We'll make sure this gets to the customer, because last thing we want is for him to eventually need to use a 3.5 or a 4.5 or a 5.5. What am I saying? A 3.5 or a 2.5, and then not have access to it. So we do have this panel, which is kind of nice. Get that removed so I don't have to keep dealing with it while I'm doing this build. Now, like in theory, I should be able to remove all of this for this hub. We're going to remove this front panel. So, are these the same, like, my question is, are these the same fans that we have here? So these are AF Elites, and these are AF Elites as well. Nice. So we have the same fans all the way around. Right now we're going to work on installing this cooler. We're going to install the cooler at the top. Get this panel out of the way. So we should be able to leave these here. We're going to add one more to the back. back here. And I think this guy overbought fans, unless I'm gonna take this panel out. We'll see what I end up doing. But I'm probably gonna end up, there's a panel in here that I'll end up taking out, and I'll look at seeing what that's gonna do now and see how that looks. So let's go ahead and get this panel out if I can, even though it looks like it's like, is it screwed in or is it riveted in? I think this panel is, okay, it's not riveted in. Remember to rotate so y'all can see. All right. Removing this is going to remove a lot of structural rigidity right now. There we go. There we go. All right, so that's back in there. This is now rigid again. So we have an all-in-one cooler that's going to go up top. We have 3 fans that are going to mount here. We're going to have 3 fans that mount. There's the cooler. So the nice thing about this whole build is all of these fans are going to be exactly the same. They're all of the AF 120s, which is super nice. The AF 120 Elites. We have a white themed build. I need to see how many fans this Corsair Commander can actually handle. If I need to run dual commanders, I have one here and I'll sell him it. I wouldn't call myself the best by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm okay. Alright, so this can handle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we're gonna have what, 3, 6, 9, 10 fans in this guy. Like, I'm interested to see if, this RGB hub doesn't actually have the functionality that I need. This is not expandable, so I'm gonna have to use 2 separate. Yeah, I'm gonna need to use 2 commanders on this, unfortunately. No, you know what? I'm just looking at this. Actually, we'll be fine, because this plugs into the motherboard, so that'll be good. And I was worried that this had the wrong fan connectors on it. So these have the correct RGB header, and then the fans have to go to this. It's going to look terrible, but at the same time, it's our only option. So as long as they both go to the motherboard, they can be controlled all the same. All right, let's do this. Start getting stuff installed and making it look good. I will say one thing. These cables on these fans feel super cheap compared to what Corsair normally does. And I don't know why. Like, for some odd reason, I remember these cables having like some sleeving on them in the black version, but the white version is super, like, it feels different, and it doesn't feel good. But, you know, not something you're ever going to be touching when you're using a computer, hopefully. Hey, it looks good, but you have to think about, like, you're going to pay a premium for that. So this case, this white case, I think is like $30 more, which not that big of a deal. These white fans for this 3-pack was, I believe, $80 compared to the regular ones, which are $50. Like, the Corsair memory that this is using is also, I think it's like $30 or $40 more expensive. Like, if money is no object, sure, white build makes sense. But in general, like, white builds aren't very cost effective. They sure look nice, though. They sure look nice. All right. This guy also, I believe, is an investment banker. He drives a BMW M8 competition. So if you know anything about cars, anything at all, those combination of letters and the word at the end should tell you what kind of money this guy has. So for this guy, the price of this thing isn't so much a concern for him. All right, so we'll have to worry about that for that. After that, all right, let's get these fans installed, and then get their cables routed. So we're gonna try and use the same path. The ones on the front go up, and then they come out here. We're gonna try and use the exact same path. All right, so I will say this: I do prefer the Corsair fans to these, but the convenience of that RGB cannot be. You can't beat that. The way they link together. And the lack of cables, like, because the only thing that's RGB on those is the outside of the, I need a larger one. The only thing that's RGB on them is the outside. The fans themselves are not RGB. So there's like limited RGB on them, which for some people is not a problem, but if you're trying to make something look like a spaceship, for sheer over-the-top RGB-ness, I very much prefer the Corsair. Yeah, all right, so that's in there. Next, we're going to mount the top radiator. All of these cables for this fan for the fans are going to be going through here. As far as the cabling, or for the routing for the for this, I think we're going to be going this way. So we're going to be looking like that. This is one of those situations where I wish I had white zip ties. Should I have installed the radiator after plugging everything into the motherboard? No, the last thing I put in the case typically is the power supply. So the order I like putting stuff in is fans, because they have the most cable. Then if there's a all-in-one cooler, get the all-in-one cooler installed, because then like you'll have space to install the fans and everything. And then you install the motherboard, and then after the motherboard, the power supply. All right, next we're going to install this radiator up top. And this should have actually been the thing that gave away to me that this was not a 7000, because the 7000 has a removable plate up here. If your all-in radiator comes with both a screw and a washer, if you're mounting it through the case, always use both. Don't just rely on one. Because the last thing you want is these things to pull through, because there's not enough material there to support it. I know that if you use enough screws, it's not an issue, but I never ever take that chance. Always use them. So with this motherboard, once I put this motherboard in here, getting to, God, this thing is so heavy. Getting to these connectors up here, which, man, these lights, let me see if I turn these off if the white balance improves at all. A little, just a little. I might have to do this build without these on. Anyways, up here in this corner is your 12-volt power connector. With the 12-volt power connectors, getting this back and routed correctly with the way this is set up is going to be a real pain. So before I install the motherboard, finally, what I will end up doing is I will end up plugging in the two 12-volt power connectors and sending them through the case as I'm installing the motherboard, just to make life much easier on myself. Okay, so we have this installed. We have all these fans installed. All right, let's whip out those exact cables I was talking about right now. This power supply it's kind of nice. Comes with actual combs so you can keep the cables nice. This is the one CPU power, which I'm about to install. This is going to be, that's your SATA, so I'm going to need that for all of the Corsair commanders. And one of the things that I was saying is this is very interesting, is even they are very specific about like sending information like, hey, when you plug in this cable, make sure it is fully inserted. Don't risk it not, because there's a huge fire warning. Like, you don't want to end up in that situation where you end up having some sort of like fire issue. Okay, so now we're gonna go ahead and we're going to install. This is what I was talking about, is installing the CPU power cables up the 12 volt guys into the board before installing the board and then routing them through. So we got one. And this CPU, the 13900 900K, 100% needs it. Needs both of these guys. Alright, so this is how we're going to do this. And I immediately put another thumbprint on it. Alright, so you see how much easier even just that was? And then we'll pull this through just a wee bit. This would be much easier if this motherboard didn't weigh, like, way too much. Get some light down there. You can now see cables are nicely kind of going around this corner. I'm going to, like, they're pretty much as tucked as they're going to get. But as you can see, that was much easier than me trying to fish these cables in there and trying to get all that. Now, let's go ahead and get some screws in here to hold the motherboard in place. Right. Next, we are going to take these off. And Corsair is doing everything they can to get cheaper and cheaper on this stuff. Oh, it's like, Corsair, I recommend your stuff because it's good. And because you guys put in just the right amount of work and effort into your products. But when you start doing stuff like this to save a buck, like, just give me a solid thing. Like, don't give me some weird pattern. Like, we both know that that doesn't save you more than a few cents per. It's just, come on, guys. Anyways, so this is kind of the layout you want for your thermal paste. Except for you want it to be smooth all the way across and not have this weird crosshatch thing. Generally, when you put thermal compound on a CPU, you put it in a certain pattern. And then once you have it in that pattern, when you push down the actual cooler, the cooler will displace the thermal compound and it will all smooth out. Which in theory this should do the same thing. I'm looking for my tweezers. Give me a second. This should do the same thing, but like usually you want to have it be the whole thing, not just that this weird crosshatch pattern. But Corsair is trying to save a little bit of money, which, I mean, you can't blame them in this economy. And just make sure you get your peels done here. There we go. I wish there was something on here that said, I don't know, top? But I think that's because this rotates. It does not. This only goes on here in one way. We'll set that off to the side. Look at that. It transferred over perfectly. Alright, what do we need to do here to make this? Alright, and make sure that these go more than hand tight. Like, most people, like, just get them to the point where they're just a little bit tight. No, you want these screws to be firm. Because if they're not firm, that means they're not screwed down enough and you're not getting proper thermal contact. And this thing, we're going to see how this lines up. It's interesting to me that this thing is, like, it's held on here with magnets. this video card is huge. So if I was to put this in here, you can see immediately it starts getting in the way of stuff. That's why it is the last thing I install. Absolutely always. While it is a little bit obnoxious having this cable, let me light this, having this cable just coming straight over the top, it is better than just like routing it someplace where it won't have a direct line of sight with where you're trying to send it. All right, last thing that goes into the front, other than I need to get that van installed. For now, last thing, the big boy. Where are my zip tie cutters? That goes in there. I'm noticing that this motherboard actually has a spot for an additional PCI power. So I think that I need to use that additional PCI power for overclocking, even though I know for a fact this guy's never going to overclock it. Hey, use what's available to you, right? That's the idea. All right, so we're going to put both of them in there, even though, like I said, I know this guy's never going to overclock this. He's playing Black Desert Online with this. Okay, let's start pulling these cables through. All right, you can see where we're starting to get with this. We're starting to get this cleaned up. I need to put in these, like one of the last things I'm going to do is I will put in these cable combs to get this nice and cleaned up. I have one more fan to install, and then we move on to the fun part, cable manage. All right, so let's cable manage this. Okay, now I'll show you a little trick that I like to do with this. So we have these two cables coming through here. We know where they go. Now we feed this cable back through just a little bit. And we know that now this is where these cables are going to, oh, you can't see it. So this is where, again, man, these fill lights are killing me. So these cables here, this is where they're going through. So we are going to, like, this split cable, we're going to zip tie it together. Again, just for visual. But the zip tie will be on the opposite side of the case. So you won't be able to see it from the front. You will be able to see it from the back. All right. So now, as you can see, cables, nice managed. We will pull it back. And on the back side, both of these cables are going to get zip tied together. And we are now managed. From where we were to where we are, we only have one more set of cables to do. And that's going to go, and I'm going to go ahead and whip that bad boy out and get that bad boy installed now. Yeah. This is the same size as this radiator. All right, I got to take a second. I got to do all the peels on this while I'm doing this. How's everyone doing out there today? Good, I hope. Doing well. Take our PCI slot protector off. Line everything up and click it in place. This motherboard has a cool feature on it right underneath here. I don't think there's any way for me to actually show it, but right down there, there's this little circular thing right here is a button for me to eject this video card. All right, cool. We now have a video card installed in this. So this leaves us one final component to put in there. Let's get this. Man, this thing it's gonna have some sag to it. I might 3D print a GPU stand. Though I will say they've made these, like, we just got to put this in perspective. This card is only this big. That's it. It's this big. All of this is just for airflow. Like this whole third fan from here back, just to try and keep this thing cool. So this is called Gaming Intelligence. This power supply is supported by MSI Gaming Intelligence through the MSI Center, which helps optimize user experience with adjustable settings. We will not be using that, seeing as nothing in this computer is MSI, except for this. Okay, so slide this bad boy in here. Yeah. So, here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to connect all of these cables with the power supply sitting in here like this. And then we will rotate it into position. First and foremost, the most delicate and important one is this 12-volt high power. Again, making sure that it's firmly seated in there. All right, everything's hooked up back here. This thing's gonna weigh a ton now. Yep, this thing weighs a lot. All right, we're ready for our first power run. Let's see what we got. All right. There we go. This is looking good. All right, let's get the rest of these drivers installed. Yeah, I think it's looking pretty good. Like we now have all of the fans lit up. This thing is pretty boss. Just doing some like simple math, this is between $4,000 and $5,000. Depending on like exactly how much you had to pay for each individual component, and like getting all white stuff, you add a couple $100 on that. So I'd say tentatively $4,500 to $4,800 for all of this. That would be my guess. All right. All right, let's get these panels put back on. And then this thing is all done, and get this out of here and move on to the next one. All of that work I did to hide those cables, or to make those cables look nice, no one will ever see them. Hey, thanks for watching that video. You can check out some of the other videos for more tech-related content. And if you want to catch me live, I am on Twitch at twitch.tv/SpecVengeance, Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come hang out, chat, and maybe learn a thing or two. Thanks for watching.